not the real mom. A stepmother who raised her husband's daughter from childhood is cut off emotionally when the girl becomes a mother herself. I still remember the moment Emma first called me mom. It was a Tuesday. She was 11. Her voice cracked a little when she said it, like the word had weight to it, like it didn't quite fit in her mouth yet. I was packing her soccer bag, double-checking for the cleats she always forgot, and she just said it, "Thanks, Mom." I didn't say anything at first, just froze with one hand on the zipper, afraid that if I moved, I'd break the spell. Then she smiled, that lopsided grin she got from her dad, and I smiled back. That's when I knew I was in. I wasn't just Janet anymore. I was family. I raised that girl, nursed her fevers, braided her hair before picture day, stayed up late helping her build a volcano for science class. I never gave birth to her, but that didn't matter. Not to me. Not back then. David, her father, was an engineer. Quiet. Solid. The kind of man who measures his words like they cost money. He told me once, when Emma was 13, that I was the glue holding their little broken world together. I believed him. Emma's mother, the real one, if that's the word for it, left when she was 4. Showed up for birthdays once in a blue moon, sent a card if she remembered, missed more than she made. I never spoke ill of her. Not once. That was a line I wouldn't cross. Years passed. Emma grew. So did our bond. We had inside jokes. A secret handshake. She even called me from college when she was having boy trouble. I never expected it to last forever. That full, unfiltered closeness. But I didn't think it would shatter the way it did. She was 24 when she told us she was pregnant. Unmarried. Nervous. She called me first, not David. Said she needed help picking out a crib. Said she didn't know what kind of bottles to buy. I was halfway through reading reviews on baby monitors when everything changed. It happened 2 weeks later, over Sunday dinner. David was watching the game with her boyfriend, Sean, and Emma and I were in the kitchen, slicing pie. "I want you to know," she said, barely meeting my eyes. "We're going to be very clear with the baby about who's who. I don't want any confusion." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She set the knife down. "I mean, you're not the real mom, Janet. You know that, right?" I felt it like a slap. Before I could answer, she added, "This baby, my baby, will have a real mother. I just think it's important we're honest about roles from the beginning. I don't want to repeat the same confusion I had growing up." That word again. Real. It echoed in my chest like a bell in an empty church. I didn't cry. Not then. I just nodded, finished slicing the pie, and told David later that night that I needed some time to think. I thought about every lunch I packed, every game I attended, every night I sat up with her through tears and heartbreak. Apparently, none of it made me real. I didn't sleep that night. David asked if I was okay. I told him I had a headache. That was only half a lie. I laid in bed and stared at the ceiling, counting each breath like it might lead me somewhere clearer. I replayed her words again and again. "You're not the real mom." Like it was a correction. Like I'd been pretending this whole time. I thought about the time she broke her ankle at camp. They couldn't reach David, so I drove 3 hours in a thunderstorm to pick her up. She cried the whole way home, scared and soaked and in pain. I held her hand the entire drive back, telling stories about silly things from my own childhood, trying to distract her. She fell asleep on my shoulder halfway through. That's not real. I thought about the prom dress she wanted, but we couldn't afford. I sold my engagement ring from my first marriage, the one before David, to buy it for her. Told her it came from a rainy day fund. She twirled in that dress like a princess, then came home crying because her date left with someone else. I held her hair back while she sobbed into the toilet and swore no one would ever make her feel small again. Was that fake? The next morning, I packed up the folder I'd made with baby gear recommendations, the list of registry sites, even the pamphlet for the birthing classes I had pre-booked for us to attend together. I set it all in a neat little stack on the dining table with a yellow sticky note that just said, "If you need me, really need me, you know where to find me. Love, Janet." I didn't bring it up again. Neither did she. David noticed something had changed, of course. I stopped asking about the nursery. I didn't bring up the baby shower plans. I made myself a quiet guest at dinner instead of the host. Emma smiled less when she walked through our door. And when she did come over, it was always with Sean now. Never just her. One day, I found a framed photo missing from the hallway. It was one of us, me and Emma at her high school graduation, her arm around my shoulder, both of us grinning like fools. I found it later, face down in a box in the basement. Sean had a lot of opinions, it seemed, about boundaries, about clear family roles. He said it in that way that's supposed to sound logical but always ends up cutting deep. I'd seen that look before. In boardrooms. In courtrooms. In mothers-in-law who smiled too tightly. David kept trying to smooth things over. She's just overwhelmed, he said. Hormones. Stress. Give her time. But it wasn't time that was eating me alive. It was silence. It was the quietness that seeps in when you're no longer included in someone's future. When you've gone from center stage to backstage, to forgotten altogether. I didn't expect a medal. I didn't need a parade. But I thought foolishly that the years would count for something. That love, poured consistently and without condition, would leave a mark you couldn't erase with biology. Apparently, I was wrong. The baby shower came and went without an invitation. I found out about it on social media, of all places. A friend of Emma's, one I used to bake cookies with during their sleepovers, posted a reel of balloons and pink streamers and a giant banner that read, "Welcome Baby Harper." There were cupcakes shaped like rattles and a diaper cake in the middle of the table, the kind I used to make for every office party. Emma stood smiling, hand on her growing belly, while Sean made a toast in one of the clips. He said, "This little girl is already so loved by her real family." I watched the clip twice. 3 times. I stared at it until the screen blurred and my hand went numb holding the phone. No one in our house mentioned the party afterward, not Emma, not David, not even the friend who posted it. Like I hadn't seen it. Like I didn't exist. I didn't ask why I wasn't invited. I already knew. I started avoiding the hallway where our family photos were hung. Each frame was a tiny betrayal memories of a family I thought I belonged to. Emma's sweet 16. Our beach trip to Cape May. The time we all got food poisoning at the state fair but laughed through it anyway. I should have taken them down, but I couldn't bring myself to. So I walked past them like a ghost. David tried, in his way. He brought home flowers one day. Said he missed how things used to be. Asked if I wanted to go out to dinner, just the 2 of us. We ended up at a booth at the local diner, stirring soup and pretending the world wasn't unraveling between us. She's just confused, he said. She's figuring it out. I didn't raise her to be cruel, I said quietly. He sighed. She's not cruel. She's just pregnant. Emotional. Sean gets in her head, sure. But maybe she's just trying to build her own identity. By erasing mine? He didn't have an answer for that. Just reached across the table and took my hand. His eyes were tired. Mine were empty. The baby was born on a Wednesday. I found out via text. She's here. 7 pounds 4 ounces. Everyone's healthy. Her name is Harper Lily. No picture. No invitation to the hospital. Just a text. Like I was an old coworker or a distant cousin who needed to be informed but not involved. I sat on the porch that night, watching the sun drop behind the trees, trying to imagine the tiny bundle of new life, Harper Lily, and wondering if she'd ever know I existed. David went to the hospital. Brought flowers. Held the baby. I stayed home. Didn't ask what she looked like. Didn't want to know. Because here's the part no one talks about. You can do everything right. You can love without condition, sacrifice without hesitation, show up again and again, and still be left out of the story. Still be labeled not real. 2 weeks after Harper was born, David came home with a photo album. Emma made this for us, he said, setting it gently on the table. A thank you, I guess. For everything. I looked at the cover, pink cloth with silver lettering. Welcome, Harper. I hesitated, then opened it. The first page showed the hospital room. Emma smiling in bed, Harper in her arms, Sean kissing her forehead. The next page had pictures of visitors, nurses, Sean's parents, his sister holding the baby. David was there too, grinning with his arms full of pink blanket. But I wasn't in a single shot. Not one. I turned each page like I was peeling off a layer of skin. Each photo was a reminder that somewhere along the way, I'd become background noise. An extra. The woman who packed lunches but didn't get a line in the script anymore. Near the back, there was a picture of Emma's childhood. Her at 5, holding a stuffed elephant, standing between David and a younger version of me. Back when I still wore my hair in a ponytail and hadn't learned how to hide how tired I was. It was the only photo I appeared in. Except my face had been cropped. Literally. Snipped from the frame. Only my arm remained, resting on Emma's shoulder like a placeholder. I closed the album. She said she thought it might make you happy, David offered. I didn't answer. I stood, walked upstairs, and closed the bedroom door behind me. That night, I dreamed of Emma as a little girl. Not the woman who had just given birth, But the child who once clung to my waist after nightmares, who used to leave crayon notes on my pillow that read, "I love you, Mom," sort of real one, in wobbly handwriting. The girl who once told me, after a classmate said she didn't have a real mom, that she didn't care what anyone said, I was hers. I woke up in tears, the kind that sneak up on you. Quiet. Hot. Ashamed. David asked me again, days later, if I wanted to meet Harper. "She's beautiful," he said. "You'd love her." I bet I would. That's the cruel part. But I said no. Because I knew what would come next. I'd be the babysitter, the errand runner, the emergency contact for when the real ones weren't available. And then one day, that little girl would grow up and tell me I wasn't her real grandmother. I couldn't live that story twice. So I stayed away. And Emma didn't ask again. I started spending more time in the sunroom. It's a small square off the kitchen, 3 windows, 2 plants, and a chair I once reupholstered myself in a fabric Emma picked out. She was 15 then. Said it reminded her of summer, blue with little golden suns tucked between vines. I hadn't sat in that chair in years. But now, it was where I went when I needed to disappear without leaving the house. I'd sit there with a book I wasn't reading and a cup of tea I didn't drink. Just staring at the road, the sky, the way the light bent over the neighbor's fence. David started tiptoeing around the house. He meant well. He brought me flowers again. Called in early one day just to make breakfast, pancakes and burnt bacon, the way he used to when Emma was little and we were all broke but happy. "I miss us," he said. I nodded, but didn't speak. Because the truth was, it wasn't just Emma I'd lost. It was a version of myself I didn't know how to return to. I used to be the glue, the helper, the planner, the one who always remembered birthdays and packed snacks for road trips. Now I was just optional. Background. A well-meaning ghost. Then one morning, I heard voices in the driveway. I peeked through the curtain. Emma. She was standing by her car, Harper in a sling across her chest. Sean wasn't with her. David had told me they were having adjustment issues. Whatever that meant. My heart leapt in that old familiar way, the kind that still wanted to believe a door was opening. I pressed my hand to the window pane, watched as she pulled a diaper bag from the back seat. She looked tired, pale, a little thinner than she should have been. Motherhood had wrapped itself around her shoulders like a heavy cloak. David met her at the porch. They hugged. She handed him the baby like she was passing off groceries. He cradled Harper with a gentleness that always caught me off guard. This big, burly man who used to fix engines now cooing at a baby like she was made of glass. Emma stayed on the porch. Didn't come in. I stood, unsure if I should appear. Unsure if I even had the right. But she turned then, and through the glass, we locked eyes. Just for a second. No smile. No wave. Just a flicker of recognition. Then she turned away, and I sat back down in the blue and gold chair, heart thudding, eyes burning. David came inside a few minutes later. Harper in his arms, humming something tuneless. "She's just dropping the baby off for a few hours," he said gently. "Needed rest. Or space." Space. From me. He asked if I wanted to hold her. Said she looked just like Emma did as a baby, same nose, same little yawn. I shook my head. "I think I'll just stay here," I said. And he didn't argue. He took Harper upstairs. And I stayed in the sunroom, in the chair Emma chose. The one that reminded her of summer. Only now, it was winter. And I didn't know how to feel warm again. A few days later, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter, blue ink on cream paper, folded neatly into an envelope addressed in Emma's handwriting. It was left on the hallway table. No stamp, no postmark. She dropped it off. I carried it to the sunroom, sat in the chair, and turned it over 3 times before opening it. It wasn't long. Just a page and a half of neat, restrained sentences. The kind you write when you're trying to seem calm even though your heart is racing. She said she was sorry if she had hurt me. That she didn't mean to make me feel excluded. That the stage of her life was confusing and scary, and she was trying to do what was best for her child. She wrote that she appreciated everything I'd done, truly, but she needed to establish clear boundaries. "Harper will know you as Janet," the letter read. "Not as Grandma. We think that will be less confusing for her." Less confusing. She closed with, "Thank you for understanding." I stared at the paper for a long time. I'd expected distance. I hadn't expected rules. They decided, just like that my place in Harper's life would be peripheral. A name, not a role. An extra in a family portrait I helped paint. David found me later, still holding the letter. She's trying, he said. She's rewriting, I replied. He didn't argue. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, helpless in a way I rarely saw. She doesn't get to erase me, I added, my voice low. I raised her. I know. Do you? I turned to face him. Because it doesn't feel like anyone remembers that anymore. He didn't answer. We ate dinner in silence that night. Two people sharing a roof, but not much else. Even the sound of the fork on the plate felt loud. Later, as we were getting ready for bed, he asked if I was going to reply to the letter. No, I said. Not even to say how you feel? I think she knows. But the truth was, I didn't know how I felt. I was grieving someone who was still alive. Mourning a motherhood I'd lived every day but never been granted in title. Wondering how love this deep could vanish so cleanly from someone else's memory. I didn't burn the letter. I folded it back up, placed it in the top drawer of my nightstand, and turned out the light. Some things you don't respond to. You just survive them. Spring arrived quietly that year. The kind of spring that crept in overnight, turning bare branches into whispers of green without anyone noticing. I sat in the sunroom, same chair, different light, watching the world thaw while something inside me stayed frozen. David tried to keep things normal. Mowed the lawn. Paid the bills. Left Post-its on the fridge with scribbled jokes like he used to when Emma was in high school and we were all trying to laugh through being tired. He asked less and less about Emma. Maybe he understood. Maybe he'd given up trying to make peace between two people who saw the same memory through different mirrors. Then, one morning, I saw something on the sidewalk. A tiny glove. Pink. Soft. The kind toddlers wear, half mitten, half magic trick. It was lying there like a breadcrumb from a fairy tale, dropped on the edge of our front walk. I stared at it for a long time, then stepped outside barefoot and picked it up. It was Harper's. I knew it immediately. Emma must have dropped by and not told us. Maybe David was home. Maybe she came to leave something. But I hadn't heard the car, hadn't heard the doorbell, hadn't heard anything at all. I held the glove in both hands like it might vanish. Inside, I washed it gently, dried it flat, set it on the table next to the letter in my nightstand. Like proof. Like evidence that I still touched some part of her world, however accidentally. The next week, David mentioned they were having Harper's christening. At their church, he said quietly. Sean's parents are planning it. He didn't say I wasn't invited. He didn't have to. I'll be out that day, I told him. Don't want to be in the way. He opened his mouth, probably to argue, then closed it again. I spent the day at the Arboretum, wandering the trails alone, taking pictures of trees I didn't know the names of. Every time I passed a young family, a mom lifting her toddler to see a butterfly, a dad giving piggyback rides, my stomach clenched. That night, David showed me a photo. Harper in a white gown, cheeks rosy, her tiny fist curled around Emma's necklace. She was beautiful, he said. She always will be, I replied, and handed the phone back. He didn't show me the rest, the group photo, the godparents, the smiling line of relatives behind the pulpit. I didn't ask. I went to bed early, lay on my side facing the wall, and waited for the ache to pass. It didn't. 3 months passed before I saw Emma again. It happened by accident, on a Sunday, at the grocery store. I was in the produce aisle, picking out apples, when I heard the soft coo of a baby and turned without thinking. There she was, Emma, standing in front of the yogurt section, pushing Harper in a little cart stroller with one hand while texting with the other. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. She looked tired, not glamorous, not polished, just real in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. I froze. For a second, I thought about turning around, slipping out unnoticed, pretending I hadn't seen her. But then Harper made a little sound, half giggle, half yawn, and Emma looked up. Our eyes met. Her mouth opened slightly, like she might say something. But instead, she just gave a short, stiff nod and turned back to the yogurt. No smile. No, hi. No attempt to close the space between us. I stood there for a moment, hands gripping the cart handle, heart pounding like I'd run a mile. Then I left my cart where it was and walked out. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel. Not angry, not even sad, just numb. Like someone had flicked the last switch inside me and all the circuits had gone quiet. That night, I told David what happened. His jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he asked, do you want me to talk to her? No, I said. I want her to talk to me. But she won't. I think she's scared, he said softly. So am I. He looked at me like he didn't understand. I'm scared, I said, that I spent 20 years building something that wasn't real. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I don't want sympathy, I added. I want memory. I want acknowledgement. I want her to remember who I was to her. She does, he said. No, I whispered. She remembers who I wasn't. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. Summer came late that year, hot, slow, and heavy. The kind of days where the air feels like it's pressing back. David's birthday was in July, and Emma called a week beforehand to say they were hosting a small dinner. Just family. Sean's parents. A cousin or two. You're invited, of course, she added, her voice clipped. Formal. Not warm. Not familiar. I said I'd think about it. Then I hung up and sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, staring at nothing. She hadn't called me in months. Hadn't written. Hadn't dropped by. But now that it was about David, about appearances, I was part of the picture again. I told David I wasn't going. I told him to enjoy his birthday. He went. Came back quiet. Said the food was good. Said Harper had started babbling, pointing at things, calling everything BA. He smiled when he said that. A real smile. Proud. Wounded. I didn't ask if she called Sean's mother grandma. I didn't want to know. A week later, I went to the library. Just to get out of the house. To be somewhere silent and neutral. I wandered the children's section without thinking, trailing my fingers over spines of books I used to read to Emma, Goodnight Moon, Stelluna, Miss Rumphius. Then I saw the reading nook. It was new. A little corner with beanbags and a shelf labeled Family Favorites. A whiteboard stood nearby with a marker and a title. Leave your name. Let others know who loves this book too. I smiled a little. Walked closer. One of the books was The Kissing Hand. Emma used to ask for it every night the week before school started. It was our tradition. We'd read it together, and I'd press her palm with a kiss just like the raccoon mother did in the story. I pulled the book from the shelf, heart warm with that old familiar ache. Inside, dozens of names were scribbled in marker, in kid handwriting, parent handwriting, crayon smudges, shaky letters. And there, at the bottom of the inside cover, in neat script, Emma and Grandma Carol, 2025. Carol, Sean's mother. I stood there a long time, holding the book like it was made of glass. Emma had brought Harper to the library, sat with her in that reading nook, read her our book, and signed it with someone else's name. My hands didn't shake. My face didn't change. I just closed the book, slid it back into place, and walked out. That fall, I cleaned out the office. We were converting it into a guest room, or at least, that's what I told David. In truth, I needed something to do with my hands. Something to distract the part of me that kept reaching for things that no longer reached back. I found old files, receipts from Emma's soccer camps, letters from her high school guidance counselor, printouts of her scholarship applications with my handwriting in the margins, notes, reminders, encouragements. I found a folder labeled College Transition. Inside, a checklist I'd made, color-coded. Dorm essentials, budgeting tips, emergency contacts, and printed emails. All of them from me to her, reminders, links, advice, encouragement. 126 messages over her freshman year. Everyone signed. Love you. Proud of you. Mom. I sat on the carpet, surrounded by old paper and memory, and cried for the first time in weeks. Not out of anger, not even sadness, but because I realized what I'd always feared. I had been loving her out loud, and she had filed me quietly away. I boxed up the folder, along with a few keepsakes. A locket she'd given me at 16 that said, Mom of my heart. A dried flower from her graduation bouquet. A keychain that read number 1 stepmom. The joke gift that made us both laugh at the time. I taped the box shut and wrote a single word on the side. Proof. David came home to find me sitting in the empty room. He looked at the blank walls, then at me. You okay? He asked. No, I said. But I will be. He didn't ask about the box. Didn't need to. The letter came in December. Typed, formal, with a small photo tucked inside. Harper, now a little over 1 year old, grinning in a red sweater, one tooth poking through. The card read, Happy Holidays from the Thompsons. No mention of me. No love from Emma. Just names. Emma, Sean, and Harper. A family unit wrapped in cardstock. David brought it in with the rest of the mail, handed it to me like it was any other envelope. But his eyes lingered. She's beautiful, he said. She always was. I pinned the photo to the fridge. Not out of sentiment, out of defiance. Let it stare back at me every morning while I made coffee. Let it remind me what I was, and what I wasn't. A few days later, we hosted our own holiday dinner. Just a few friends. People who had stayed when the title of family wasn't attached. People who showed up without needing a bloodline to justify it. They brought wine, pie, mismatched chairs. They laughed loud and hugged long and didn't ask what Emma was doing for Christmas. One of them, Marcy, from my book club, brought her granddaughter, a squirmy 4-year-old named Sophie who insisted on helping me mash potatoes. She stood on a stool in her candy cane pajamas, holding the whisk like a sword, telling me stories about her imaginary unicorn. At one point, she turned and asked, "Are you a grandma?" I hesitated. "I was once," I said. "Do you still have cookies?" "Always." She grinned and went back to whisking. Later, after everyone had gone, I sat in the sunroom, same chair, same window, and watched the snowfall cover the street like a clean sheet of paper. David joined me, 2 mugs in hand. No words, just the quiet hum of old togetherness. "Do you regret it?" he asked after a long time. "What?" "Raising her." I thought about it. About Emma at 5, asking if I could braid her hair like the princesses do. About the time she forgot her lines in the school play and I whispered them from the front row until she remembered. About every scraped knee, every whispered secret, every silent moment of pride I never claimed. "No," I said. "I don't regret it." "But she can call me whatever she wants," I interrupted. "Real, not real, Janet, stranger. Doesn't change what happened." David looked at me, brow furrowed. "I was there," I said quietly. "That's what matters." Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, I finally felt still.